are streaming.
We are streaming. It always it's funny because it always says buffering, but then it says live, and then but we're always out a few. The show is on. I'll just do a bit of tagging and getting everything there, Andrew. But you can talk. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. It's a pleasure to be back here again with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here again. I'm just gonna do another little thing and change the view. Just we'll go to gallery view, so we can either be side by side or you can be on top of me. Yeah.
I'm side
How
by
you
side.
been? Okay, how have you been the last couple of months? I know how you've been because I've been talking to you and I've been seeing all your Instagrams and your LinkedIn's and but just kind of maybe
well, what's the reality? There's Instagram and there's reality. Is that what you're saying? You know, it's like
you've been a guest already with us. Can you kind of maybe just give yourself a little introduction?
Sure. So I'm a business psychologist. I work with busy executives, helping them try to find some balance in their life, you know, which I talk about the 4 keys, so business, body, relationships, mindset, and trying to navigate that as best we can and stay mentally healthy, you know, throughout that. And obviously this year has been testing for a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners and anybody really who's, you know, has experienced the last year. But that's kind of my main focus. Sports background, hockey background. Obviously, that's where our paths have crossed in the past with hockey, and still huge passion for hockey. So still playing when the rinks are open, and then just sort of bringing that life together with, you know, how do we perform at our best? How do we show up in life as our best version? And so bringing some of those worlds together into what has now become the 4 keys method, if you like.
Okay, so now you've done your introduction. I've got everything streaming now, so I can fully concentrate on you, brother. Yeah, really grateful that you're here. It's coming to the end of November. I can see you're active on your face with regards to bringing awareness to men's health. What I saw you shave your beard off and prepare and get ready for this. What's Movember meant to you in your journey as being, you know, from a young kid with your regards to your post today, which I'd like to talk about. We'll talk about to the athlete, to, you know, the personal coach, to the personal coach now. Yeah, you know, because this is something I want to really try to get into, is like our change in perspectives as young men, as adults, and as men who become a little bit more mature and can grow a mustache in a month. What's Movember meant to you in this point of your journey now?
So this Movember was the first time actually that I've done this, and I think probably more than ever we need to raise awareness around some of the challenges that men are facing today. And so I've always been a little bit resistant to charities and things that I thought people got into because it was a cool thing to do, you know, or, you know, someone's running a marathon, so they decide to raise money, but really are they just doing it because they want to run the marathon and they need a motivation, but actually what's the real purpose behind it? And I suppose I've been touched by so many sort of stories over the last few years that are secrets for the most part, you know, that people are keeping secret. They might have shared with me either in a coaching conversation, or it's come out, you know, we've heard about it too late, you know, because someone's taken their own life, which is the reality of, you know, when it comes to mental health. I think Movember has probably changed a little bit. I mean, it was very much about prostate cancer, and I think that's a very serious illness for men, and we should all be aware of that. So raising awareness of that and making sure we're getting regular checkups, I think is important. But I think there's also, now we're talking about mental health, and I that's what kind of grabbed my attention with Movember this year, is that, yeah, let's raise some awareness around that. And I think it's such a good way of doing it, because it looks terrible, right? I mean, this thing on my face looks terrible. So you get talking about it, and you talk about, you say, well, it's Movember, and then we go, oh yeah, Movember, that's right. So what's it about? Well, it's about raising awareness for prostate cancer and making sure men are getting regular checkups, and also that we're looking after our mental health as well. So it's a brilliant way to start the conversation, raise awareness. So for me, it's probably something I'll do every year now, for that reason.
I've gathered there's been a sense in the last 8 months, there's been I want to say not a slight shift in your focus on who and how you're teaching men in your personal coaching and also business coaching. It's just, I've just felt a sense of a little bit of a shift. Yeah. Can you kind of maybe say what it was like 8 months ago for you working with men, and also, well, working with people, to now kind of like you are really focusing on men a lot more?
Well, I've noticed it's interesting you say that, because I would say that I've become more explicit about it because I felt there was a need for it. I was quite surprised at the pushback on that.
Yeah.
So I put on my LinkedIn, I help men, get stronger, happy, healthier, and majority, it was a real mix. So I had some men say, what, this thing, I'm not really into that. The fact that you focus on men, I'm not into that. Okay, fine, it's fine, no problem. I had women who said, this is amazing that you're doing that. There's not enough help. There's loads of stuff for women out there, for leadership, women in leadership and women in business and entrepreneurs, and very little for men. And men have different challenges. They don't have a challenge about being around the table, but they're being challenged around our identity, and they're being challenged around how we show up and how we talk about our feelings and all these sort of things. And then I had one woman, so I want to make sure that who was just angry at me, so angry at me that my thing said I help men, and why had I connected with her on LinkedIn? Why would you bother connect? How dare you connect with me on LinkedIn when you help men? It's like, wow. I mean, no wonder we're having a problem with this conversation, because you run a business and you have insights and you can help us. And it was it was a minority, and it was but you often end up focusing on that one thing, right? But quite a few women said to me, I noticed you focus on men. Why are you asking me for advice? Because I asked a question, what advice would you have for men who are starting businesses in today's world? What are some of the challenges? And women would go, well, I'm not a man, so how would I know? And I said, well, what if you did know? And they said, well, they should recruit more women. Okay, great. Let's have that conversation. Why should they recruit more women into the C-suite? And why is that? And then we got into the maternal instincts that women have, and how can men develop some of those maternal instincts. And now we're having a great conversation, and people aren't threatened by it. And it was great. It was great that we could come from it from that perspective, rather than this kind of, well, I only focus on women in leadership and you focus on men in leadership. So it's a bit like saying I'm a vegan and you're a carnivore. So we don't, our paths don't cross. Well, why wouldn't they cross? Because actually vegans and carnivores are talking about the same problem. We have an environmental problem, so, but once you get people talking, they realize that, and it's just, and we're living in such a polarized world at the moment. Politics is heavily polarized. So, yeah. So it was an interesting kind of experience from that perspective.
I'm trying to work this into a bit of a thread, because now I'm going to step right back to, okay, so I'll leave it on this one right now, is that there seems to be, C-suites are predominantly occupied by male white bodies. And there seems to be there is a blame towards, that particular demographic, towards the system structure that we are living in today. So I can get the thing of like, if men that look like us created the problem, why are we trying to help men who look like us? Mm-hmm. And I get it from the perspective of what I know we are both trying to do. So let's just kind of park that for a second and go back to the story that you put out on LinkedIn today, which is an old idea of what you were taught, what your father told you, and what your grandfather told your father, and then was passed down to you. And you even found this kind of old way of thinking. You mentioned it to one of your children today. So let's try to get into the mindset of our grandfathers teaching our fathers, teaching us, things that may have worked in the past, but might not work today. So can you tell the story?
Well, I think there are two parts to that. So there are things that are passed on that don't work in today's world, and things that do. This particular story was a kind of a pessimistic or a negativity that filtered through the DNA, of the family, if you like. And the story I shared was, age 8, really enjoying playing cricket. Like I loved having the ball in my hand, the bat, and it just felt great to play cricket. And I've been playing with my neighbor probably for what must have been, it seemed like an eternity to me, but it was probably the school holidays. And I came in, and some of my friends were going off to these cricket sessions. And I said to my dad, I'd love to play cricket. And it was so unlike my dad, but it was like he was on autopilot. He just said, "You'll never be a cricketer. Don't think about it. You'll never be a cricketer." And it just shut me down. And then I kind of just lost interest in cricket, because it didn't inspire me to want to play. I didn't have anything to prove to him, but my dad was a good cricketer. And, fortunately I found street hockey, which became my thing, and then hockey. But 15 years later, I was sat, and my dad had passed away by this point. So I was with my granddad, my dad's dad, and we were sat watching TV. And I remember it clearly because it was so cold in my granddad's house. Like he would turn the electric heater on, but only the light. So you say it's psychological. It looks warm, but it was always so cold in his. So I can remember watching ice hockey. And in fact, I remember who was playing. It was Newcastle were playing. So I was about 15. So this is going back, nearly 20 years.
That's when I was doing it on Sky.
Yeah, you probably were. You probably were. You were probably the commentator, because it was that era for sure. Yeah. And that's funny. And I said to my granddad, "I'm going to play ice hockey one day. I want to play at that level." And he just said, "You'll never play ice hockey. You never play ice hockey." And all of a sudden, it was like, now that moment in my life of the cricket, which has stuck with me forever, it showed up again in my granddad. So I was kind of like, "Granddad, tell me about Dad's cricket," because he was really good. He could have played, could have had a career in it. And he was just like, "No, your dad never been a cricketer." Now, you speak to any of my dad's friends, anyone in our town, my dad should have gone the whole way. But I wonder how much of my granddad's pessimism, and wherever he got it from, I don't know. Post-war, I don't know. Who knows? Unfortunately, I'll probably never know. I don't know if it was from his dad and his dad, But, and then catching myself saying something to my eldest daughter when, just something where I was just a bit, "No, I don't think that's going to work out for you, Izzy," and then all of a sudden going, "Hang on, how on earth why wouldn't it? Why am I putting that on her?" And then joining up all the dots, and how we have these negative patterns that just feed through us, which may be protecting us and keeping us safe. That's the thing, isn't it? A lot of these things are keep us in our comfort zone. Maybe I was just trying to keep Izzy, my daughter, safe. But actually, I was holding her back, and her beliefs, her dreams, and what she could do. So, we just pass our biases on, which probably links to what you're saying with the why do we have this pattern in organizations of white men, because we choose people like us. Yeah. Safer.
I think. Definitely what we've noticed is fear, a fear to, if something works, let's say something worked for our granddad, then passes on to father passes it on to us. And that could have been a simple thing like, you don't tell people when you're feeling sick, because you're not going to be able to go to the factory or down the coal mine, because that's where my family would have been from, because you're not going to get paid. There's no sick days. And we need money to pay for food and to survive. So you never tell the boss you're sick, because you're going to get sent home. You're going to lose money. And then that gets transferred to my dad. My dad then says to me, "Never let anybody know you're sick, son." And that definitely transferred into my athletic career, where, when the day that I did tell a coach that I had a sore wrist, he told me to stop my whining. And then I was like, "Oh, okay, I can't do that." And then I had a broken wrist, and I played a whole season of hockey with a broken wrist. And at the end of it, like, I'm 16 years old and I need to have a bone graft from my hip to my wrist, the scaphoid more or less eroded away, you know? So
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the mental. So that taught me that. And then also with my journey with alcohol use, and as the consequences got worse and worse and worse and worse, me feeling like, oh, I've got a problem here. But that thing that I was taught, don't ask for help because I'm going to be judged.
Yeah.
I'm going to be told I'm weak. I'm going to be told I have no willpower.
Yeah.
And
lose my job
so,
in today's world.
I'll lose, you know, yeah, you'll lose your job. And then that brought me into the depths of where it ended up. But I had no ability to say help me to anybody. So these are the things now that, like, if I can say that I have evidence that unlearning those old ideas has helped me, I can then bring that evidence to other places, the corporate world, the sporting organization, and say, well, let's look at unlearning some of the things that may have worked in the 80s and 90s, because the economy was different then. You know, there was in the advertising industry, there was a lot of money around, you know, and you were making a lot of money for very little work, and there was a huge abundance. And it was this mentality of, you have to be at work at 8:30, 8 o'clock and turn your computer on because you've got to be there before your competitors, you know. And now, if you were 25, 26, 27 years old, you know, in the 90s, and now you're my age, you're still thinking about those old ideas because they made the bank balance, right? And now we got to try to, now the fear of, oh, I'm not going to work with Andrew and hear about unlearning because I might lose money. You know, my corporation might fail. So how do you kind of work with guys about, you know, maybe with these old ideas aren't working so much anymore. Let's let's be brave and courageous and look at new ways. And I think this is where, you know, I love how you work and your messages and stuff like that, because it is a little bit, you know, let's challenge ourselves, you know, let's challenge ourselves to get out of these comfort zones. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think there are certainly things that have served us well, or served our grandparents well, you know. And I think I'm certain that post-war mindset, you know, was, again, you know, the idea is you just got on with it and you didn't think about these you know, what took place. And so therefore that was passed on to the baby boomers, and then the baby boomers had to stiff upper lip and pull your socks up and march forward, and so we are, you know, but now the millennials are more disconnected from that, you know, and are asking for a different approach. And you've only got to read some of Marcus Aurelius, you know, to know that what you and I are talking about existed, you know, 2,000 years ago. It's just that we've gone through these different iterations, and I hope we're coming out the end of it. So I think there's some context there that people need to understand, that this is not, you know, because some people who have perhaps used those old ways, we call them old ways, but they could just be ways that have served us well for 75 years. That's, I guess, is what I'm saying. And actually, they're not that old, and actually pretty new. And what you and I are talking about potentially is we're getting back to the old ways, to being more present. And if there's anything that COVID-19 will have done is, you know, you might be hearing my family in the background now. That normally I would have been in the office and you wouldn't hear that, but I can get off this call, sit down with my wife and kids and have coffee, you know, or drink, not my 3-year-old, but you know, I'm there, I'm present. Yeah, he doesn't need any coffee, trust me.
Try it.
Yeah, no chance. So I think there's a shift there that we're going, hey, this is quite nice. You know, this is nice. You know, you and I having this conversation that we might not have done, you know, pre-COVID, or so there's some good things coming out of that. And I think there's a bit of reconnecting, you know, people reconnecting with nature, reconnecting with walking, reconnecting with being just present with life, because we have some time rather than get up, jump on the train, you know, get to work, head down, do the work, you know. So I'm hoping there's some things that we can take from this, that we can reconnect with our most human instincts. And I think the Industrial Revolution and World War I and II has a lot to answer for when it comes to these things that we think are, you know, are the right way to do things. We're talking about 250 years, which is nothing, nothing in the scale of things.
So it's the systems and the kind of values that have been instilled in us, really, like you say, since factory work, capitalization of the human body, and people making money out of the human
GDP.
Work experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have these things now that are built in us about these ideologies of, we need stuff to be measured as people, right? We need the car, we need the latest washer dryer, we need all these things, and it's created this culture of competition, right? So it's always competition, and even on teams where as a unit you're competing against another team, but there's even individual competitions on teams, trying to be the highest scorer or the most assists, or so, like, you have all these. Now I'm interested to know your kind of thing about, like, I'm saying it's an old way, but you're saying it's a new way. The old way, getting back in touch with our kind of our why we are here, our, I don't know, our human spirit, or whatever. Is that what you're kind of trying to get people to think about?
Yeah, I think it's about simplifying life. I think it's about recognizing that, yes, we have to go and work. We can't be work shy. We have to go out and work, whether that's, 15,000 years ago, doing the hunt, or working on the farm, or, more in the last 250 years, leaving the farm and then going to the city because you can earn 5 times as much money. And that's where the shift, I think, took place. But so the competitiveness, to liken it to sports, at least in sports, you've got the opportunity to shake hands at the end of the game, to look someone in the eye and say, that was a great game, or to work towards the championship and sit on the bench for the whole season, but still feel like you've contributed in some way. And to be recognized for that. If you've got a good coach, the coach will create that kind of culture. But some of the bigger organizations, the competition is ruthless. Even in, if you take health, for example, I mean, the competition between pharmaceuticals is absolutely ruthless, to the detriment of the better drug getting to market. That's crazy. That a drug that's life-saving doesn't make it to market because the other pharma says no chance. You're not going to win that fight, because we've got this product, which is nowhere near as good as yours, but we're still going to win, So when you've got that kind of thing going on, then all of a sudden, and it's a systemic problem because, countries are measured by GDP. So all the time countries have to grow. It's going to drive bad behavior. If every country was driven by engagement and happiness and paid for that, we'd probably see a very different landscape. If you've got a bonus on, hey, we met our quota for happiness, this is what people are saying about happiness, that would be very different. That's quite angelic, but yeah.
I know you said, because of COVID, we perhaps wouldn't be doing or talking like this, and that COVID may have accelerated something that I feel it already started. I feel like, with the increased numbers of people who are getting into, the health and wellness industry and holistic thought processes and, yoga and meditation, it was on the increase, but I seem like this is kind of, just for me anyway, it's definitely has brought me back to the point of, like, and even some of the things that me and Melissa are doing, like, this thing came up the other day about forgetting to remember. So forgetting these ideas to remember who and what we really are, which are a species that we're always of service to one another. In our tribes, we always had a purpose, a hunter or a gatherer or a childbearer or a nurse or a guard. You had something where you were adding value to the protection and to the well-being of your community. And now it's all about, like you said, like, we go to work and we do need those paychecks, but all the focus has been on the paycheck to the detriment of, like, we've forgotten what we really are, which are these beings that are designed to help one another, not take one from one another. And
Yeah.
COVID has kind of brought, it's really with the workshops that me and Melissa are doing and the companies that we're working with, we're starting to kind of, we really feel like there is a shift in this, and that there's never going to be going back to the way it was in January of this year. And that there's all these new ways of being able to work, of being able to be present. What do you think, you know, the next year will entail with you know, with how things are going with what you've been doing with your offerings and coming out of another lockdown? What's your kind of feeling on how things are going to go?
It's an interesting one for me because I've definitely experienced shift myself. So when it first kicked in and everybody was saying new normal, I mean, people were saying new normal within 2 weeks, right? And I was thinking it takes much longer to drive cultural change than a 2-month pandemic, you know. And then it got to 3 months and people were still saying it, and 4 months, and I was thinking, no, I think you need an extensive amount of time to drive cultural change for people to say, you know what, we're probably never going to go into a retail outlet again and buy our products. It's always going to be online. And I'll circle back to that because I think there's something important about that. But or whatever it is, the way you and I, you know, I've not flown across into London because you said, hey, Andrew, we've booked the studio. Can you come and do a podcast with me? And can you be there tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I found a cheap flight. I'll be there. You know, I'll go and visit my mum at the same time and I'll do whatever, you know, we just don't need to do that. And we should hopefully get into that new normal. But because of lockdown 2, my mindset started to shift, and I started thinking, actually, maybe it isn't as far-fetched that there is a new normal, and we are going to, the landscape's going to change over the next 5 years. And it was interesting because I put a post on LinkedIn, and it started off with, I'm moving to the Bahamas, or I want to move to the Bahamas because I think I can do my sales job just as well there, if not better. Would you let your salesperson go? And it was very polarizing, you know, in the response to it. But what was interesting is that people were saying things like, you know, I would never have been able to be the salesperson I am unless I'd got my training face to face. We would not have been able to win the clients we won unless I was able to be in there and shake their hand. And again, it's, you know, yes, maybe that's yesterday, but we've proven that we can have business meetings, and don't base it on what Zoom is today or what the technology is today. Let's try and imagine what the technology is going to be like in 5 years and 10 years. And then ask yourself, will retail still be there? And ask yourself, will you still be flying to Hong Kong to have a business meeting to close that big deal? Probably not. And I think it is going to change quite dramatically. And I think for a lot of companies, there's going to be a bit of a boiling frog scenario where they really are holding on to those old ways and saying, yeah, I could never be who I am today. But if you look at the age demographic of most of the people that were disagreeing with me, and I'm going based on their LinkedIn profile, so I have to be a little bit careful, but I think there will be 40 plus, you know, so an older, kind of more mature generation of people that were saying, no, it's always been like this, it has to be like this. And I think there are people there rubbing their hands together in Silicon Valley saying, you have no idea what's coming and how we're going to help you serve your customers better, and how retail experience is going to be very different. And so I that's a bit of a futuristic type discussion, but and this might sound arrogant, but when my mindset shifts and I've, you know, kind of woven myself into the fabric of commerce, and when it shifts, when I shift, I think, oh, this is coming. So and that might sound arrogant, but I've been right more than I've been wrong with that.
I agree. And I actually say that what you know, me and Melissa are doing right now with a couple of companies that we are working with, like I'd say that we're going to become a disruptor. You know, and I don't mean like a disruptor like Airbnb and Uber were disruptors in the app world and the gig economy, but I mean an actual disruptor of of ecosystems of the corporate environment. Because I think, like, I just know things are going to change, and even the people that are resistant to it are going to be retiring, And you're right, technology is, I know I hear people talking about like VR and haptic suits, and you know how we can have these experiences in meetings where we'll actually be able to kind of like punch somebody on the shoulder and give someone a tap and stuff like that. I'm not saying that that would happen, but because physical contact in the work environment is frowned upon. But you know, but and I think it's a good point. And to say hybrid is kind of makes sense, but I know it doesn't really fully kind of encompass the change of how technology is going to help us all interact, and how, like you say, like flying to Hong Kong to close a business meeting, and the environment, and like this all is going to change. And I live in Soho now, and Oxford Street is not going to be like Oxford Street of old. And I'm excited about it, you know, because I think at the end of the day, it's an awakening. It was an awakening for me. The last 4.5 years have been an awakening for me, but specifically in this since lockdown happened. Andrew, I'm going to tell you a funny one. Do you know what I've learned about? Maybe I kind of talked to you about it last time, but I've learned about self-care. You know, and for me, that was something that was like I'm self-care, self-love is selfish, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say that, you know, like, you know, Melissa has helped me out an awful lot in that with the workshops that we were providing, because I listened to what we do. And it just got me into a place where I kind of like, I was doing self-esteemable acts, you know, in the workplace, in my personal life, you know, I was always like, I was trying to do something to be of service to somebody. And slowly those self-esteemable acts built some self-esteem in me, because I had 45 years of self-loathing, right? I'm worthless. I'm this, I'm not worth love. And then finally, like, I was like, wow, you know, I'm proud of you. And that kind of just sparked a little thing in me where I was like, you know, I could walk up a little bit more upright. And I was going to make a comment, because just before this, you know, I had a shower and I used like cocoa butter and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to tell Andrew about this because he's going to laugh, you know, but I was like moisturizing, you know, and like what dudes do that? What dudes talk about that? But really, it's just an act of self-care, you know? And it's thing, I think that if men can start talking about things like that in just safe environments, just to say, hey, do you know what? It's all good. It's all good. And I'm just hoping that this is, I know it is a time of another awakening. We were all becoming woke, you know, to some extent, but I think this is definitely kind of giving us a little kick in the butt.
I hope so. You know, I think there has been an opportunity for people to spend more time on the internet and see some of that polarization and decide what camp they want to be in. There's a lot of that in the moment. And I think there's a big part of this is getting the camps just to talk. There's a guy I follow on Instagram, and he does a lot of work for men. So he's got a mentoring group for men. And I like what he talks about. And I always thought he was quite balanced, but it's very much you know, there's a picture of him with his son, and he's got blood on his face because he's had his first kill in the hunt. So it's very much, it's a bit, you know, how to be manly. You know, unless you've got an axe in your hand and you hunt bison, then you're not really a man. You know, it's like there's a bit of that, which. Well, what was interesting is he put a picture of Harry Styles on Instagram, and Harry Styles is wearing a dress, right? He was so triggered by it. Like, you know, this guy's got a dress on and he's a role model, and he's, you know, it's disgusting that this guy is allowed to be seen and be a role model to these guys. And I'm not triggered by it at all. And actually what I saw was a brave young man, a great artist who was prepared, you know, is comfortable in what he's wearing. Now, I didn't go out the next day and buy myself a dress because I was so inspired by it, right? But I completely respected him. And actually I stopped following the guy because I thought, you know what, you know, if you can't see the bigger picture here, if that's really what you want people to think, like that he's not a true man because of what he's wearing, then we've really lost our way with this. Now, you know, it just amazed me. And what made me curious was that I'd been following him and kind of believed in some of his things, but just didn't. I looked at it and thought, I just don't agree with you on this. Like, it just doesn't. What you're saying doesn't resonate with me. So that was just an interesting kind of process.
I For me, it all stems back to fear, right? You know, like if there are men watching this and they're saying these two guys are just full of it, you know, I'm never going to cry in front of my kids. I'm not, you know, it's this fear of being judged or not being accepted or being looked at as like unmanly. And, you know, for all of the things that, my dad was a great teacher. And I do remember we were in a hockey tournament once, and I'll never forget this. And we were in the line to get the buffet to get some food, and there was a quiche, a pie quiche, right? And no one was eating it. And my dad took a piece, and some kid said, "Oh, real men don't eat quiche." And I remember my dad turned and looked at him and said, "Son, real men eat whatever they effing want."
Yeah.
and I was like, man, that makes sense to me. And I think this whole idea of what real men are, I think we need to challenge each other on that.
Yeah.
And say, you know, where did you learn that from? And is it really true that real men don't cry? Why were we built with tear ducts? Why do we have these emotions in certain parts of our brains to produce tears? You know, we're meant to cry.
It's release.
And I think,
you know,
it's an emotion that is in our body, in our DNA. And I think to be, you know, so these are the unlearnings of this, is that, you know, and that's or suck it up. You know, get over it, all of these things. And I love the fact that I know you and I will start doing this, to start holding more spaces for men to talk. And I think that's because none of us have the answers, but I know that by talking about it, we can make change, positive change.
And to give permission, you know, to go out, go for a walk. And if you feel that emotion come over you, for whatever reason, you know, you have permission to go with it, not to hold on to some old mantra. That now, you know, maybe there is a boundary. I don't know, where there are certain times, or you know, making a distinction between being brave and not being brave. You know, are there times to hold back? And again, that's a philosophical conversation. Is there a certain situation when you don't cry and you hold on to it, but at the same time you're aware of it and you're present with that? You know, I mean, we're talking about probably children here. I had a good cry a few weeks back. Like, it completely side blinded me. Like I went for a walk, and the day before I'd done the Wim Hof course. So anyone that hasn't heard of Wim Hof, is the Iceman who helps you kind of manage your breathing in cold conditions. And so I did the course, and I thought, you know, it's a bit like an ice bath after hockey. You just jump in and you kind of, it's cold, but you know, and I would just kind of learn how to breathe in it. But it was at the end of the day, you do the ice bath, and I got in and it was so much colder than I expected. We'd done the practice and the breathing, and I had my daughter with me. He's 21 now. And so we did and I could hear her breathing panic a little bit. And that kind of got me panicking a little bit. But the guy was there with us, the instructor, and he just whispered in my ear, "Surrender." And even now, when I think about it, it kind of takes me back. And I surrendered to the pain of the water. And I thought, that's interesting. That was interesting. And the next day I kind of went out for a walk, and I started thinking about the surrendering. And then I started thinking about all the things that I believed, you know, I've done enough self-care, self-work, reflection. I'm a psychologist, you know, I've done the work, right? But clearly there was some stuff, still little deposits or stuff that it's just an ongoing journey. And I was surprised at how much I had to that release from me, from just thinking about shit. There are some things that I've just not surrendered to. And that pain, this cold water immersion was such a teacher to me around pain. And then starting to think about all the pain in my life that perhaps was still showing up in some way, whether it was emotional or the way I responded to certain things or got triggered, and just went for this walk, and it all just came out, and it completely sideblinded me. Like, I didn't see it coming at all. So it just became this really powerful experience.
Yeah. I remember the last time I cried was on Remembrance Day Sunday. And it had nothing to do with Remembrance Day. I'm always emotional that day, but it was at the end of Queen's Gambit. the Netflix thing.
Yeah.
And I don't,
I've watched it.
I
It's
bawled like
brilliant.
a baby.
Yeah.
You know, the ending just got me, and I felt
Yeah.
really good after, because it just made me reconnect with some
Yeah.
you know, like some thoughts of my dad, you know, who's passed,
Mhm.
and it just made me feel really, I don't know, just in a nice safe space to let these tears out, and it felt good. It felt good.
It does feel good.
And I think that this is when you talk about surrender, I think we're just running out of time now, but I think if we can just leave this on as a thought of surrender is just another way of letting go, right?
Yes.
You know, and when we're trying to control things, when we're worried about how we're going to get paid, when we're worried about whether or not we're going to put food on the table, when we're worried about whether or not we could have a holiday, we tend to kind of do this, you know, I need this because out of fear. And I think that thing of surrender and just letting go and just going, I'm just going to learn how to trust that the universe will look after me. I have friends, I have family, you know, things will end up, and they end up being okay. And I think that the less that I try to drive and the more that I try to be guided, you know, life ends up being okay. And
that's certainly my experience. That's certainly my experience of that's the part of letting go. And it seems counterintuitive, especially for my clients who are entrepreneurs and business owners who are trying to pay their bills, to encourage them to let go. Because when you let go, you have clarity. When you have clarity, you see the wood from the trees. And when you see the wood from the trees, you move forward and you take action. And every time you take action, you know, things happen. So
exactly.
Otherwise we're in that fight flight.
Yeah. Always a little bit of faith followed by a little bit of action. And I think you end up being okay.
Yeah.
So just quickly, you're about to move, right? There's some boxes.
You see all the boxes. Yeah. We've been delayed a week. But literally just around the corner. So there's a street here called Mlada Horokove, which is, I'm living in Prague, as you know, which is a great story. So there's a good film on Netflix about Mlada Horokove. It's worth watching her experience of during World War II, and then how she ended up having a worse experience during communism. But we live on that street, which is dedicated to her. So looking forward to it. It looks over Letna Park. So we're looking forward to getting around there. Yeah.
Nice. I'm looking forward to visiting you one day now.
Absolutely.
Now that I have a girlfriend from Czech too. So
yeah. And we'll get you on the ice for a little skate for sure.
Yeah. I love it, brother. I love it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Let's well, I know we're going to be collaborating soon, so we'll keep people posted on that.
Perfect.
And be good, brother. Be good. And
you too.
If I don't talk to you before Christmas, have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Say hi to Melissa.
All right.
Bye.
Take it easy, brother.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday at the workshop. Thanks, everybody, at the What's on an Elephant Castle Facebook page. We'll see you soon. Bye.